Today on Portland Tea Party, diversity, equity, inclusion. What is it? Does it still matter? And what's happening around Portland? We are going to interview one of the top people in government leadership around equity. But first, this week's news. Welcome to Portland Tea Party. I am Ciara, Pressler, your host of your favorite show about Portland, the tea, and where the party's at. Now, speaking of what used to be the Tea Party, of course, we're not from the political Tea Party. We are reclaiming the concept of a Tea Party here. This week was the Republican National Convention, and I watched every moment. Just kidding, I didn't. How am I keeping my sanity this year? By not paying attention to federal elections. A little attention. Of course, there's been a lot of drama in the last week. Oh my goodness, since we last spoke, you know? So I had to peek in a little bit. And of course, there's still the Biden drama and all of that. But I'm looking forward to the DNC that might have even more drama than we ever thought. But of course, today's news is overtaking that news cycle, which is nobody can operate anything because there was some sort of like Microsoft outage and planes can't fly. The subway in New York wasn't running. The government can't run. The hospitals were having issues. Of course, a lot of these institutions have backup plans. Don't worry. But it's a pretty big deal. And I've been saying for years that the new warfare will be digital warfare. I mean, if we can't get our money out of the banks, I don't mean don't start a run on the banks, all 25 people who watch this. I don't want to create an economic crisis. But, think about it, how dependent we are on digital. Am I going to change the whole way I live? No, I'm not, because if it happens to one of us, it's going to happen to all of us. But I do think the government should start thinking about not having these tech monopolies, because if everyone's running on the same system, then everybody's screwed if it goes down. So I probably won't be leading that cause, but it's something to think about. There's only just a few companies that we all run on their platforms. If Amazon Web Services went down, huge, huge problem. Not talking about Amazon delivery, right? Also, that would be a crisis. But Amazon Web Services, which support most big websites, if Google went down, I know my company runs on Google's platform. So that'd be a huge deal. Plus, Android phones that are on Google's operating system. Or if Apple went down. And I know Apple users think that nothing could ever happen to Apple, but that's just PR. It could happen to Apple. So, we'll think about that as we support maybe our elected officials and how they interact with the tech industry and how they think about monopolies. We're definitely in some sort of monopolized zone right now with business. But let's bring it back to local. In the news 2 days ago, I have to say this, even though I'm right here. Do you know where these stylish orange chairs are? No, I'm not at West Elm. No, I'm not at IKEA. I'm at Multnomah County. I'm in the building. And just 2 days ago, an article came out about Multnomah County spending $250,000 to get its mission, vision, and values done. So I had to take this opportunity to market my own company, which does mission and vision and values. Well, we didn't get that contract because we have never charged even half that much for mission, vision, and values. So either I raise my rates and start charging what these old school consulting firms are charging, or I use this to advertise, which is what I did. I sent out a big newsletter yesterday, and I even listed who we've been getting mission, vision, and values done for and how long it took. Not a year. It takes sometimes 3 weeks, which is what we're doing for a department at Washington County for a budget of $6,500. We did all of Portland Fire and Rescue, their entire strategic plan, including mission, vision, and values, in about 5 or 6 months during a double emergency, COVID and wildfires. and we got that whole project done for under 100K. And let's see, Portland Engagement Project, huge project engaging the whole community in what should happen when it comes to the engagement framework, and created a whole game plan for that for under 150 for the city of Portland. So, can it get done better, faster, cheaper? Yes. But as this show is teaching you, I'm not saying one person is at fault. I'm not saying one person sucks. I'm saying our leaders, as all the people you've met through this show, go back and watch every single episode. What are you doing with your life? They're great people. They care about public service. They're smart. They're good leaders. They're good managers, but the systems are not supporting them making the best possible decisions. So in this case, maybe procurement had something to do with it. And don't worry, I wrote a letter. But we have to think about who's creating systems, who's dismantling the systems that no longer work. And so we're going to talk about one of those systems today. And when you hear the word systemic, that means it's something that's embedded in the system. So maybe one person with the best intentions can't take the best possible action because something's embedded into the system. All right, let's get into it with someone who's actually an expert. When we are back, we are going to welcome my friend and someone I admire very much, Joy Fowler, in just a moment. Well, we are here with Joy Fowler, who is the Chief Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Officer for Multnomah County. And thank you for welcoming me here in the building, even though I'm a critical citizen.
And that is okay.
Yeah.
We appreciate critical citizens, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes. So tell me, okay, you have your own department of DEI here at the county?
That is correct. So I serve as the Chief Diversity and Equity Officer. We operate out of the Office of Diversity and Equity. And that includes us looking at a host of aspects relating to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Everything from policy, whether it's based around accommodations, whether it's based on LGBTQIA2S plus policy, looking at operationalizing our equity lens, which essentially means that we want people within the county, no matter what they're doing, to look at things through an equity lens. And really, whether it's budget equity or whether it's looking at equitable programming, services, and anything related to that. We also have a youth commission. And so, really looking at what serves them and supporting them. We have our employee resource groups and supporting whether they want to work on events, activities, have us look at policy. We do that for them as well. And then we, in addition to all that, have our workforce equity, which is around really looking at breaking down barriers for our employees in our workforce. Mm-hmm. And we've designed that through our workforce equity strategic plan that goes now from 2024 to 2028. And we just got that approved by the board in March. And then we tie all of that together through our research and data, because that also is equally as important as all the other things that I mentioned.
You are running a solid operation from strategy to data, and high fives on having a strategic plan. We didn't make it. Did you pay $250,000? Sorry.
Our strategic plan was really organized by our workforce equity manager and in support with other county partners that are internal. And we worked together as a unit to move over a 6-month time period to create the plan. And then worked to edit and engage all of our other partners, whether it was, human resources, labor relations, legal, all of those entities to put forth a finalized product for the organization.
That's awesome. I know there's a lot of, because a lot of these things are relatively new in institutions, that there is some confusion around how do you turn equity into a plan, because people are really afraid of quantifying diversity and equity inclusion. And we're trying to work on a model for that too. What did you find in that process of like, okay, how do we put this to something that has a KPI or is measurable?
Yeah, one of the things that I am big on is being actionable. Like we can have every bell and whistle that we need to, but if we don't have any action behind it, then we can't move forward. And so I think the team that pulled together the work on this really focused on what are the things that are impacting our employees, what are the things that we want to hold people accountable to. And I won't say accountability is relatively new for the county, but the way it's perceived by someone, for example, like me, who's been in an industry where we're held accountable for everything around financial services, coming to an organization that is deeply involved in community, accountability can operate a little bit differently. So, really helping people understand what we mean by accountability and how you can set performance measures that are synonymous with holding people accountable. And so that was really what the focus was. And I have a thought in my mind that I want, no matter whether you are the chair or whether you are a new employee that just got onboarded, that is working in a clinic and you are serving customers, I want everyone to feel the impacts of the strategic plan. Now, of course, I know that's a little, pie in the sky, but it is definitely a hope that I have is that everyone feels some impact of the plan in a positive way. And we're doing it by moving as a unit. We're not moving in silos. We're not saying, okay, you go work on this and you go work on that and we'll figure it out. We are really being intentional. And that's why I wrapped up all of what's going on my team with data and research, because as we move through this iteration of the plan, we really want to do so, making sure that we're measuring the same thing, that we have goals that are similar, so that if something isn't working in one department or on one team, that we can sit back and analyze that and say, okay, well, what do we need to do to ensure that we are measuring things the same, and how do we get there so that we can, when we report out to the board, which is our responsibility, and to community, that we can say, this is what we're measuring. We're measuring it together. This is how we made progress together as a union. And so I'm really excited for the next 4 years. Really, I'm really excited for the fifth year when we, can actually recap all of the things that we've done.
You can measure as you go. Is there a way the public can see the plan or the goals or what's happening?
Yeah, all of our information is on our website. We built a site when we started working on the plan, and so everyone can access it. They can pull it up. They can see the progress that we made. They can see the final version. They'll be able to see our edits. They'll be able to see our any annual reports that we do. They'll be able to see all, and then of course they can always watch the board meetings when we report to the board. So those are public as well.
Let's back it up.
Okay.
Let's back it up. What is equity?
Oh my gosh. So when I think about
multi-million-dollar question.
So when I think about equity, I really think about it from the standpoint of that what I need to be successful within an organization may not be what you need to be successful in an organization. And that we have to look at people or even groups. I think about groups and I think about departments, that we have to look at them as to what are their needs that they um, need to be successful and to make progress in our organization, whether it's from a professional standpoint or a personal standpoint. And so I don't think of equity as a one size fits all. And I think that can sometimes happen when you're looking at doing these broad plans, that you're saying, oh, we're just going to give X to this group of people. And really, then the group of people are like, this does not pertain to me at all. Yeah. So it really is being intentional about, okay, when we use the term that we want to be equitable, what does that mean? And having a solid idea that it is not a one size fits all, and really being mindful and being thoughtful about what each individual needs, and recognizing that it's okay. I'm going to add that it's actually okay to give people what they need in different aspects of the things that they're working on, and not feel like, oh, well, we can't do this for you and that for her, and we can do it all. Everybody can get what they need to be successful.
I love that. So are you serving more of an internal kind of HR empowerment role, or do you also do work that is for the community to have those opportunities?
Well, it's interesting. So even though I am focused, so let me back up. When I first started in this role, now over 2 years ago, I kind of took a look at the organization as a whole because I think before you walk into an organization and say, I'm going to do what my predecessor did, or I'm going to do what I did at my last organization, you have to step back and say, what does the organization need right now?
Yes.
And when I did that, I realized it really was important for me to be focused internally because Multnomah County, when you read things that Multnomah County is doing, when you look online, we have these amazing things that are written. And my objective was to determine, is what's being written on paper, are we demonstrating that internally? And so that has been my whole focus, has been to be internally focused. And I tie it to community, which I don't know if many people do that, but I do because I feel as though if people are thriving at work, if they're feeling like they have a sense of belonging and that they're being afforded opportunity and they're growing in their career and their people are supporting them as an ally. When they see something happen, they're either checking in with them to say, would you like me to say something? Or they're saying something. When people are feeling like they are doing well in the workplace, it automatically feeds to community. And all of Multnomah County serves the community. And so I tie them very closely together. So whatever I'm doing internally, I guess maybe I have an expectation that it's going to feed into community and that people will feel like they're thriving in community just as we're thriving here. And I won't say we're perfect at it because we are not, but because nobody's perfect at it, but we are definitely, that is something that we are striving to do every single day.
Yeah, and I think with equity, the goal is not to get to perfection because I don't think in this country it's possible.
Right.
Um, but to keep being curious and adaptable as we become more aware of things too, because what
Absolutely.
equity would have meant 30 years ago or 60 years ago is very different than now. And so in several years from now, it'll be different again. To your point, I really like the point that you're making about, the ripple effect through the community because, a big thing that I think Portlanders need to understand is what happens where. So a lot of times, even when people are running for office, they're like, I'm going to solve this problem and in the city. And it's like, well, you're running for city council, but that problem gets solved at the county level.
Right.
So let's talk about all the places that the county touches the community. Health,
Mhm.
health happens at the county level, and that
Absolutely.
includes like addiction treatment, a lot of what's happening on the street.
Behavioral health.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I met somebody last night whose new job is just to, when somebody on the street has a communicable disease, get them to a place where they can get better, but also
Mhm.
be sort of quarantined so it
Right.
doesn't spread. And I thought, like, such a specific thing I never would have thought of, so that's a huge community service. And if they are being treated equitably, they're going to naturally start thinking about that and how they deliver their services.
Absolutely. And it's so important, that we mirror the communities that all the communities that we're serving. I think that's incredibly important. And one of the things I love about the county is that we're very intentional around, ensuring that people have the skills, the knowledge, and ability to be able to do just that. And that if they don't have the lived experience, they themselves have done the work to be able to understand who they are interacting with in community and how they can relate to the things that they're going through. So,
Yeah.
100%.
Well, let's talk about actual justice, which is the courts, jail, the sheriff. That's all at the county level.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And even though, the sheriff is an elected official, and we just had a really great conversation because I love the work that she's doing around looking at things from an equitable lens in terms of a couple of projects that she's working on. And so just identifying, if you're thinking about things that you're doing in the jails, like we were having a conversation around, even painting a jail requires equity and signage requires equity. All of those things and how you perceive equity is really important. And it was really exciting just to hear her passion around the projects that she's working on regarding a couple of things in terms of the jail system. And, I was really thrilled to hear that, yes, all of those things are equitable and that the fact that you're thinking about those are exactly what we want you to be doing. So,
Wonderful. What other things happen at the county level besides what I mentioned? Is there anything I missed?
So, I mean, when we think about, homeless services,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
Because the joint office of homeless services is housed at the county, right?
correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Huge.
And I think, one of the things I've always been impressed about is the partnership and how, and I think you said it best, nothing's perfect. And I think that the county does a really good job of engaging and wanting to build those partnerships and those relationships because we can't do this in silos. And I think it really is important that that we all recognize that to be able to make progress going forward.
Yeah, and when I hear you say nothing's perfect, what I hear you saying is we can't beat ourselves up because we haven't reached perfection, but
Right.
but we need to not let this idea of perfection get in the way of significant progress.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think once we let that guard down of we have to be excellent, we have to be perfect, I think we should always strive for it because I think that's incredibly important. I think if we stop striving for excellence, if we stop striving to do good work, if we stop striving to ensure that things are equitable, we'll be satisfied with the status quo. And we should never be satisfied with the status quo. And it's interesting because, I'm probably one that is, kind of, I don't want to say silent because I'm never really that silent, but I'm one that kind of takes a very different perspective around the approach to diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, access. But people don't realize I am, really engaged and wanting people to nudge and move and make significant progress. And whatever we did last year, we can't do this year. We have to always strive to be better and push the envelope a little bit because that's the only way, number one, we're going to make progress. And we might realize, ooh, okay, we pushed a little too hard. So let's step back and then let's reassess and then let's continue to make progress. So I'm really focused on that, but I do it in a way that might not be the way many people are accustomed to.
That's okay. You have your style. Yeah, I think the place I see a lot of really worthy projects getting stuck in Portland and government is our desire for perfection and perfect inclusion. And I'm really, I come from startup background, so I'm like, just launch something and then keep improving it. Because if we wait for it to be perfect, 2 years from now, like we may not even be able to keep the project going. It gets more expensive. So it's sort of a design approach, I think, that is a philosophical.
Well, I appreciate it because you can always make adjustments along the way. And it's funny you say that because the one thing that when we talked about our strategic plan, I was really, really intent on telling people a strategic plan is not static. If you have a plan that is not manageable and malleable and able to change and shift, then you don't really have a plan because things will change. Goals will change, objectives will change, KPIs will change, all of those things will change. And so if you're not willing to adapt in the moment, then you can be following a plan that nobody buys into and nobody even understands. And that's not what we want to do here at the county. So I appreciate you saying that.
Oh, yeah. Two quick things. If somebody who's watching this, a Portlander who doesn't have the benefit of having a DEI BA leader like you, and they want to learn a little bit more about it or start thinking about like, oh, how could this be part of my workplace? What's like one small step you would recommend?
Build awareness.
Yeah.
Build your own personal awareness. I say number one, identifying where you are in your awareness. Like, where are you? Are you someone that is considered, you consider yourself an activist? Do you consider yourself the desire to be a practitioner? Are you an organizer? Are you a social justice warrior? Like, kind of figure out where you are in your space and what you believe in. And then just start to educate yourself. There are so many incredible reads out there, but find a read that will meet you where you are.
Yes.
If you are very new to this work and you read a book that is so drastically different than who you are and where you are, you're going to shock your system.
Yeah.
And when you shock your system, it actually could cause you to retreat versus
Right.
to lean
You get
in.
overwhelmed.
Exactly.
I've seen that happen.
And so take time to really invest in where am I?
Mm-hmm.
What do I want to learn? And what is my progress that I want to take? And not only build awareness through your reading, but also engage in community. There are so many things that can be done in community. And I'm not just talking about like going to this, activist event and all those things. I'm saying, how about you just show up at a restaurant where people do not look like you?
Oh,
They
I
are
love
not
that.
part of your
Yes.
community.
Yes.
You know nothing about them, and sit in that space and really take time to embrace what you see, talk to people, and engage, because
be uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is very hard for us. And it's not
So
only,
hard.
it's funny because a lot of people think it's only hard, oh my gosh, white people only feel have difficulty being uncomfortable. But I think all of us, in some sense, when we're not familiar with a community or a group of people or a place, have that sense of discomfort.
It's healthy.
It is. It's very healthy. Now, I do think some people have the ability to lean into discomfort a little more because they spend their lives in discomfort.
Yes.
But nonetheless, it can be just uncomfortable. But I will say to everyone that is listening, it gets easier and better with time.
Yes.
And the more you do it and the more you lean into it, you will find that it becomes a part of who you are. So that when someone says to you, are you familiar with this community? You won't just be talking about your one person that you know. You'll be talking about the community that you're involved in from whatever standpoint.
And what would be your small piece of advice to somebody who's maybe just getting started in a career, or maybe trying to make a move in a career around DEI, like they want this to be their profession also?
So I will say, getting a certification.
Okay.
Especially if you decide that you heard me talk about there's activism, there's social justice, there's organizer, and there's DEI practitioner. While I think it's very important that you exercise those parts of your brain that are not at the forefront, and I can talk a little bit about that. If you decide you want to be a DEI practitioner, I think it's worth anyone's while to get a certification. So, for example, I through the Society for Diversity, I got my certified diversity practitioner, and then I went on to get my certified diversity executive. And even though I'm in government and some things may or may not directly correlate, it's still great for me to have the knowledge, because there may be some things that I can draw from that I can implement and just implement differently. But the certification is not a certificate, so it's not a one and done. You have to every year you have to take courses, you have to design materials, you have to go to conferences, all to continue to maintain your certification. And that's what I like about it, because it keeps you fresh and it keeps you really atop of knowing like what is going on, not only in your own community, but also across the country and in other countries. Because I actually got my the executive certification. I got working through the team in England. And so I logged on at 1 a.m. and she was like, why are you here? And I was like, I want to learn. And wonderful. And so I just encourage people that if that's what you're thinking, because now a lot of roles are requiring some type of certification in this work, so that they know that you have a sense of mastery in what you're looking to do for an organization, and you're not just kind of, I'll say, winging it. So
or just having opinions that you then want to institutionalize.
Right. Because lived experience is great.
Yeah.
But along with lived experience, you also need to have, I think, a strategy for yourself around how you're going to, move the work, set initiatives, set goals and objectives, etc.
Wonderful. Yeah. Joy, will you stay for tea?
I would love to stay for tea.
All right. When we're back, Joy and I are going to get into it about what we talk about as women of color when you're not around. Stay tuned. Oh, good. It's tea time. Hot drinks, hot gossip. Joy.
Yes.
We became friends through a leadership program we met about a year ago.
Absolutely.
And I just always appreciated everything you had to say and how thoughtful. And I watched you transform throughout the year, and I just admire you so much.
Well, I feel the same about you. I'm really excited to be here to support you in this way because I watch all the time and I get to hear all the tea, and it's always wonderful. So I'm happy to be here.
Yes. Well, some of the things we talk about, it's not easy, and we both reached like a pretty awesome point in our careers. Like I'm really happy with my career, and uh I interact with all kinds of people since we're consultants and coaches and we go into places, and there are definitely some things that the allies do that are actually counterproductive because here we are in Portland, it's very progressive. People want to do right by people. Yeah. You're from New York.
Yes.
I lived in New York the whole first 15 years of my career, so that's kind of where I got my my own hustle. But um, I will tell you, the hardest type of person I deal with in my job is the racial justice warrior who is usually at the entry level tier of the org chart, comes in like an activist with a loud voice and strong opinions, and is very unprofessional. It's usually a white person. They're usually talking over and speaking on behalf of Black and brown people and maybe other people because they don't want to find realistic solutions or make plans. They definitely don't want accountability. They want to be right. They want to identify with that group. It's, I think, I think the original desire is very worthy, but the execution of it is actually causing more damage than good. And the big thing that I hear from a lot of Black women executives is that once a Black or brown person, particularly women, are elevated past a certain point, they no longer count as a person of color. And I think it's because they can't be saved by that white person.
Interesting. Oh my gosh. There's so many things that were
to agree with me, but that's my experience.
One of the things I will say is that I think you hear what you're talking about from so many people. And what I'm trying to understand is how do we have space for them while building relationship, coaching them, and mentoring them, that their approach is actually or could actually be causing harm.
Yeah.
And helping them really sit with that. Because the moment you approach them with the pick a thing, you're wrong, this is not how we do it.
Right.
Your generation is doing X. It will then send them into defensive mode. Yeah. And so I've been thinking about this because I come in contact with all different individuals as well. And I'm always like, okay, I'm listening, I'm hearing, how do I get them to think, yes, and this is how we can do this so that all people feel like they are engaged in whatever process you're bringing to the table. Yeah. And I appreciate the vigor and the excitement that they have around it. But I also think it's about personal awareness and knowing when have I stepped over a line. And it was funny, you also just said that when you get to a certain place in an organization, that people don't recognize your Blackness. And it's very interesting how I have had to say multiple times, y'all do know that no matter how many letters are after my name, I wake up every day Joy, and I wake up every day Black, and I wake up every day a woman. Right. Like those three things are consistent. And I until you just said that, that it has to do with how high you go or how high you are in an organization. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've had to say that so many times. Yeah. And sometimes I don't know that people even hear me when I do say it.
Yeah, so it's wild.
Yeah.
I think one thing very adjacent to that has caused, I know you're picking your words carefully, so it makes me want to, it makes,
I love that you just said that.
Well, it makes me want to be very direct to like balance it.
Please.
Then I'm going to look like the asshole. But
that will not be the case. Well, first of all, you're talking to a New Yorker, so this New Yorker values directness.
People are listening.
But that's the beauty of it.
My pet peeve in this work is the famous PDF. I have always, first of all, posted every year a PDF online, which is called White Privilege Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. And that's how I even understood what is white privilege or anything like before I knew the concept. And I think it just explains it perfectly. And I always come back to that when I'm thinking of any kind of privilege. And I can post the link to that for all y'all. But there's another PDF that got very popular, either for the
first time to get in it now. I definitely know where it's going, and I definitely have an opinion.
It's like, I don't remember it's like White Supremacy Culture.
Absolutely.
And it's by Tema Okun. All right. And it's from like the 90s.
Correct.
And when people started posting on LinkedIn of like, oh, that's white supremacy, I was like, where are you getting that? And they would post this link to that, and I would read it, and I'd be like, but why? It doesn't explain why they think these things are white supremacy. So I dug a little deep, and it's things like a sense of urgency, or like what's another?
Perfectionism. Individualism versus collaboration.
Okay.
Things like that.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm reading it and I'm like, well, it doesn't say why this, they're just saying that it is. So I dug a little deeper, like who wrote this? It was someone who was an academic.
Yes.
Worked with, her mentor was a Black man.
Correct. She's a white woman.
She's a white woman. And I was like, why is she the expert on this? And people never were using multiple sources either. There should never be one single source on anything. That's religion. That's not study. So that was surprising to me, but people use this very short document as a weapon in the workplace.
And what many people don't realize is just recently, she actually published, number one, she made the statement that she wasn't aware that it would be received the way it has been received in the workplace. And so she published, she has a whole website that is dedicated to here's what she meant, here's how it should have been received, all of those things. But a lot of people aren't talking about
They're not looking at the website, and it says specifically, like the things I was thinking, like, I don't mean it in this way.
Right.
But
it's too late. I mean,
it's too late.
I'm like, it's too, and I appreciate that she's done that, but it is too late. And I will say some of the things all make logical sense. They all are, incredibly accurate. And I agree with a lot of the things that are said in the article, but I don't think it's okay. And but I don't think you can just take this Band-Aid and say, we're going to take the history of this country and rip it off and take all the things that are considered white supremacy. And now we're going to move in this manner. You can, but what it can do is it can cause a negative effect. Because, for example, when you think about putting forth something, let's talk about payroll. Okay. When you have an organization that's like, we're going to pay you on the 15th and the 30th of every month, and then you say, well, we're going to just say we're not going to lead with a sense of urgency. If the organization took that into account, you would get paid whenever they felt like it. Yeah. And that doesn't make logical sense. Like, because you need to pay people for the services that they're providing with the organization. So I just think, like, there's one, when you think about individualism versus collaboration, I definitely see that as one that I'm like, I can relate to that, because now we are in a time where, maybe you talked about it earlier, how, years ago, things operated different. We were very individual. You did a job, you got paid, you did all the things that you needed to do. And now collaboration is really essential in the workplace. Number one, you have so many different, you almost have every generation working in the workplace right now. Yeah. And so the reality is you have to lean into collaboration, because otherwise people won't feel like they are a part of something, and then they won't support the work that you're trying to do. So there are some where I think you can do very readily and very easily. And I always come from the mindset of, if I can't get something done or I can't do something, I'm going to be completely transparent and honest and say, I know you want to do this in this way because of this document, this knowledge that you have about the white supremacy concepts. And I also realize that this country is based in these concepts, and it may be hard to navigate that. And that comes with its own set of things.
I just think the whole framework is fraught because it's like, I think it gets interpreted as like a sense of urgency. Anytime that's present, that's white supremacy. And then also that means white people always want a sense of urgency. And that also means it's always oppressive to people of color if it's a sense of urgency. I'll give you an exact example. We were doing a strategic plan for a housing nonprofit, the biggest one. And we were, it's planned. And I insist on measurable goals, KPIs, deadlines. And one of the executives said, well, I'm worried this is white supremacy, the sense of urgency. And I said, listen, housing is urgent, right? And the people on the street urgently need to be housed. People who can't find out urgent, like it is an emergency. So we respond to it like an emergency, because to not would be racist. That would be racist. Yeah. So I think you just have to use common sense along with these things.
It's a balance.
I'm always looking for, like, is there another resource to define what that term could be? Because it always comes back to that PDF.
It does. It does. And it's very, even when I think about deadlines.
Yeah.
And I'm having to share with people, yes, I understand you're telling me that deadlines are a white supremacy concept, but we are for example, we're in a government agency that has to submit things at a specific time, that we have to deliver things when we say we're going to. And so it's a balance. And finding that balance is often very, very difficult between, yes, I hear you, and yes, I understand. So what I try to do is I try to like put things in place so that people can feel that there is no sense of urgency, or feel that the timeline has a little more give, where if I know that something is needed by, August 1st, I'm not going to ask my employee, for example, to give it to me by the 15th of July, because they might feel that there is a sense of urgency. So I might back it up to say, hey, can you give me this by, June 15th?
Yeah.
Which gives them and me kind of the ease of, okay, Joy, I might not be ready, or I might not be able to deliver to you. I'm not feeling the sense of urgency to push them. I can say, okay, great. Fine. How about another 2 weeks? And then they've given it to me at the time where it works for me. It works for my leader. I'm not harmed because I've done it. They're feeling like they're able to kind of work within the boundaries that are given to them. And then I'm still able to deliver a product to whoever is asking for something. So I feel like sometimes I have to do this, I'll call it maneuvering to support what people are reading. Because here's the reality: no matter how much I talk about how I feel about the document, or what the document says or what it doesn't say, or how the document impacts the work negatively or positively, people have internalized it.
Okay.
And they have operationalized
it. We have to deal
within themselves. Yes. So I'm saying I'm trying not to fight it so much. Okay. But I tell people all the time, for me, that document is only a piece of the pie. Right. There's also this, concept of, communities of color not getting along with one another. Yeah. To me, that's the biggest white supremacy concept.
Yeah, turn people against each other.
Weird.
Also socioeconomic, right?
Exactly.
Like if the groups of poor people across races are fighting with each other, we're not going to dismantle capitalism. And I think often we conflate white supremacy when we mean capitalism, even though they are intertwined. Because I always think, well, in Africa, things happen on time. That's a deadline, and that's not a white culture, or I think, things sometimes get done perfectly, or I've worked with several people from the continent and everything, and all those traits exist because they're appropriate in certain situations. But also I'm thinking of like a capitalist situation, but like we're in the game. Some people are burn it down people, and I respect that. Actually, I'm a get in the game, learn the game, change the game
Right.
while going with the flow of the game, because also I benefit from the game. We all do. My paycheck is the game. So,
Yeah.
and I need that to live within the game. So, um, I think people want to have it both ways, and we all are contradictory in some ways as well. And I'm always trying to watch for that. But I just think concepts of the workplace and being professional, like, you know, they don't have to be always a race issue. Because everything is, but also everything doesn't need, it's a weapon. It's a defense.
It's hard. And I appreciate you saying that. It's hard because and I think, and I will put it in the context of generations or generational, because there was, that was what my generation was raised on. You were raised on your professional, you get things done,
You work the hardest.
focus on yourself, because if you focus on yourself, others will benefit, and then the organization, like, you have these things. And so this is what we were raised up on. And so then when you're in community, and I consider work community, when you're in community with individuals that are kind of like saying, well, that's not the way it should be. This is why I keep saying I have to understand. I don't always have to agree with it, but I do have to understand that this is what they've internalized and operationalized in order for us to move forward. But I will always ask, can we all get along as as communities of color? Like, can we get along as Black and brown people? Like, if we can demonstrate that sense of unity before we start talking about all these other white supremacy concepts, let's debunk and let's do away with the main one that nobody talks about, which is us coming together and being a unified force. And you can be an activist, you can be a social justice warrior, you can be an organizer, you can be a DEI practitioner, you can be anti-racist, you can be a racially just, all of those things. And if we come together and actually focus on the strength of that versus, well, I don't like her because she's a DEI practitioner, so she don't want to burn it down like me. Like, if we could actually, like, not worry about that and worry about, okay, I might need the person in the room to tell someone, hey, that was lightweight racist. I can't do that. And then I can come in, or someone else can come in and say, okay, but how do we work together to bring us to, a place of understanding? And then another person can come in and be like, how do we also build awareness? And there are 3 different aspects of the work that actually help to move us all forward in this work that we call, diversity, equity, inclusion,
the endless journey.
Oh,
well, the other thing I see, I have plenty of clients and friends and family who are white, and people who want to do better, getting totally shut down because they aren't doing it perfectly, or they just haven't learned yet what somebody else learned. And I think in this development, there's this expectation that everybody's at the same stage at the same time. And like, if I've learned something, how dare you not know it yet? And somebody who wants to learn it or could be an ally gets really like treated really poorly. And then that makes them recoil and feel like I'm not welcome here. And then they don't learn it, or they don't interact with those people.
And then they get ridiculed because they won't step up. Because they're concerned that they're going to be told that they're racist, or they're, embodying white supremacy concept, or whatever it is. So they don't say it. So it's almost like a double-edged sword. I don't want them to speak up, because if they speak up, they're going to take over. Versus, and then if they don't speak up, then I'm upset that they haven't come, to support the work that we're trying to do as an oppressed people. It's like, no, you can't have it both ways. And for me, and it's interesting because one of the biggest places I struggle is that I lead and do this work out of pure love. And that, for people, when you add that component into it, and if I'm not willing to burn something down, or, march across the bridge or do something, they don't equate that as being dedicated to the work. And so for me, I personally cannot damn someone or treat someone or make assumptions about someone just by looking at them when I have not built relationship with them. And I don't even know who they are as a human. Yeah. And so for me, it is always about meeting someone where they are, grace, benefit of the doubt, and assuming positive intent. And then when you work to have to correct someone, it is about doing it with care and love, because that's how I would want someone to come to me if I did something. Yeah. And so that's an approach that I'm almost wondering if it's unorthodox, because I don't know that many people.
But it's how real change happens. Like,
exactly.
When I have been, like, when someone's bit my head off over something that I either did wrong or didn't do the way they thought I should do it, I go away, right? Mm-hmm. I feel attacked. I'm flight, right. And when somebody says it in a kind way, not only do I change my behavior, I help educate other people in a mm-hmm. kind way too. So I think there's something there. I want to say we do have to go to work today. I'm glad we had this conversation now, because you've given me some good things to think about. And as I go into my next project that has to do with some of these dynamics, mm-hmm. I'm going to approach it differently. I'm going to be more compassionate. I'm going to try to meet people where they are. I'm going to try to learn more. And also the tip about just interacting with maybe different cultures or groups where I don't necessarily feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. That's something that I try to do, but staying humble there too. Not absolutely. Like, I went to this restaurant, now I'm woke, right, but yes, just like continuing to be humble. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm going to work on this summer.
Well, I appreciate you for just engaging me in conversation and letting me let my hair down a little bit.
Yeah.
And just have some good conversation. I love that we don't agree. That's the beauty of the work, is that we shouldn't agree. If we all agreed, we would just not be making the progress that we're making. And I need to be pushed and pulled in order for us to be successful. So I appreciate you, and I'm just so grateful that you had me on today.
Thank you. When we're back, we have to end on a party note. So where the party's at. I realize I don't have my party list because it's on my phone, and my phone's across the room, but I will say, just go on Instagram, because it's Pride weekend and there's so many amazing Pride things happening, events today, tomorrow, and of course Sunday. Pride parade, parties, drag, everything you could ever want. I love Pride. And tonight is the 107.5 Summer Jam featuring Ice Cube. Are you? I know.
I'm not going, but I love it.
I'm going. I'm so going to that. Old school hip hop, sign me up. I am there. So I hope that you get out this weekend. It's going to be beautiful weather. Celebrate, get some rest and replenishment, but definitely party, and let's celebrate our friends and our neighbors and Portlanders in the LGBTQ2IA plus community. Thank you for being part of Portland, and we're excited to celebrate you. All right, everybody, as you have really heard today, if you want to change the game, get into the game, learn how the game works, and let's make change collaboratively. We're all on the same team. All right, we'll see you next week.